racist woman ruined the dress, believing it was merely a black waitress. Her millionaire husband witnessed it, and the red wine splattered on the white dress like blood over fresh snow. Victoria Hartwell saw her handiwork with cruel satisfaction as the young waitress frantically tried to remove the liquid from her skirt. "Oops," Victoria told in feigned innocence, her smile showing perfect teeth and a rotten heart. "What a pity that people like you don't know how to move properly in civilized settings." The Boston annual charity gala brought together the East Coast elite at one of the city's most exclusive hotels. Austrian crystals hung from the ceiling, imported orchids decorated each table, and the discreet sound of a string quartet created the perfect soundtrack for high society hypocrisy. Jasmine Washington was just 24 years old and could never have thought that taking that additional waitressing job would place her in the middle of a racial controversy that would turn everything upside down. She was an MBA student at Harvard and required the additional income to support her family and finance her final term at school. Her own hair was pulled back in an elegant bun, and she carried trays with the aplomb of one used to bearing heavy burdens on her shoulders. Victoria Hartwell, however, was just the sort of woman who thought about charity work, parties, or professional catwalk. Wife of real estate tycoon Robert Hartwell, she enjoyed all the advantages of being born wealthy and marrying even wealthier. Her existence was a never-ending parade of charity lunches, spa appointments, and shopping excursions that totaled more than the entire family earned in a year. "I'm sorry, ma'am," Jasmine replied softly, crouching to sweep up the pieces of glass that Victoria had dropped. "I'll get it cleaned up immediately, don't worry." Victoria responded loudly enough to draw the attention of the other tables. "I suspect mishaps are likely when you book this type of staff for functions." The venom in Victoria's tone was so poisonous that a few onlookers halted their chats to observe the spectacle. Jasmine sensed the interested stares, some flushing with embarrassment, others obviously enjoying the gratis performance of public humiliation. "You might want to hire more polished professionals for events at this level," Victoria went on, waving her hands dramatically. "Individuals who have an innate sense of how to act in polite society." Victoria was unaware that each venomous comment was being swallowed by Jasmine with the forbearance of a woman who had ridden out far worse storms. Grown up on the south side of Chicago by a single parent who held 3 jobs, Jasmine had learned young that real strength doesn't yell, doesn't respond. It watches, it learns, it acts at the appropriate time. "Oh, yes, ma'am," Jasmine said, her voice staying calm enough to make Victoria scowl, annoyed at the absence of emotional response. "I'll have everything done in the proper way." Her way to the kitchen with the ruins, Jasmine passed discreetly past the main table, where a refined gay-haired man observed the entire scene with an impassive face. They exchanged a fleeting glance, and he nodded almost unnoticeably, as if he saw something in her that no one else could perceive. Robert Hartwell had constructed a real estate empire on one rule alone: watch others when they believe no one is looking. And at that very moment, as he witnessed his wife publicly humiliating a young working woman, he saw 2 things distinctly: Victoria's real mean streak, and the dignified haughtiness of that waitress who stood firm in the face of wrath. In the kitchen, Jasmine finally let her hands tremble slightly when she threw away the shards. 20 minutes prior, she had been a student with a mediocre life, struggling to make the bills. Now she felt a rising urge, as if the universe was preparing something much bigger than a simple night's work. What none of the people in that opulent hall was able to comprehend was that the plain waitress Victoria had just assaulted was hiding things that would flip the embarrassment into the trigger for transformation that none of them would ever forget. If you have seen acts of injustice such as this and wish to know how one night can turn the lives of those who feel they were born superior upside down, do not forget to subscribe to the channel so that you can continue reading the story of justice that will show you that underestimating individuals can be worth a lot more than any amount of fortune. Victoria was not done. While Jasmine brought back clean towels and a fresh uniform from the kitchen, the socialite had discovered her ideal audience, a group of high society women who listened to her words as if she was divulging the secrets of the cosmos. Did you see that? Victoria threw up her hands in dramatic gesture, her voice dripping with theatrical outrage. The temerity of some folks to believe they can simply creep into our affairs. Evidently, one of the people in the organization did not properly screen the employees. Margaret Wellington, heiress to a pharma fortune, nodded in agreement strenuously. Darling, you are absolutely right. Yesterday I was forced to fire a maid because she dared to question how I clean. These individuals must learn about boundaries. Jasmine stepped back into the main hall and immediately felt the load of their stares. Victoria's crew had expanded, and she could pick up bits of their nasty conversation as she set the glasses back on the table in front of them. Of course, she returns. She must need it that badly. Imagine one of our daughters being made to work like this. At least she knows her station and didn't attempt to speak back. Victoria sensed Jasmine's presence and made a conscious effort to speak louder. Anyway, girls, I suppose we cannot be too critical. Not everybody is blessed with a silver spoon to be born into and get full formal education. Victoria did not realize that Jasmine had graduated summa cum laude in economics from the University of Chicago before securing her position at Harvard, that she grew up rendering legal documents for her mother, who cleaned offices at night, to be able to finance her 3 children by herself, that at age 16 she was already in charge of the family finances and had converted the family's small savings into a fund which financed her 2 younger brothers' college education. Jasmine completed setting the table in silence, but Margaret chose to make her own contribution to the public embarrassment. "Dear," she said to Jasmine, her tone dripping with condescension, "you do know that employees should be discreet at events, don't you? Not draw attention to themselves unnecessarily." "Yes, ma'am," Jasmine answered, holding firm but respectful eye contact. "I get it perfectly." Something in the tone of Jasmine caused Margaret to pucker. There was an articulation, a presence that did not conform to the stereotype she anticipated coming upon. Victoria saw her friend's uncertain pause and resolved to drive in the attack harder. Margaret is correct. Indeed, Victoria rose, going toward Jasmine with a sadistic grin. "Maybe we can have a brief word regarding proper procedure. You can read, can't you?" The words were tossed out in measured viciousness, being audible enough for surrounding tables. An uncomfortable silence emanated throughout the surrounding area, and Jasmine could feel dozens of eyes upon her, anticipating her reaction. "Yes, ma'am, I read just as well," Jasmine said, her tone the same professional composure, but something in her eyes blinked otherwise. Victoria tittered, a shrill, unappealing sound. "A great idea. Perhaps you can read this for us." She took the event menu and extended it to Jasmine in front of the others. "So, we can be certain that the service staff knows precisely what is being served to the VIP guests." It was a calculated and heartless humiliation. Victoria was determined to make Jasmine reveal herself, praying she would stutter, trip over the French names on the menu, or just refuse, and provide her with justification for calling security. Robert Hartwell, observing the entire drama from the head table, experienced a rush of shame and fury. 23 years of marriage to Victoria had taught him some unpleasant aspects of her nature, but he had never witnessed anything as blatant. Jasmine accepted the menu with calm hands. For an instant she gazed straight at Victoria, and for the first time that night permitted a faint smile to play upon the edge of her mouth. "With pleasure, ma'am." And to the shock of everyone there, Jasmine proceeded to read the menu not just smoothly, but with impeccable French pronunciation she had acquired while she spent 2 years as an exchange student in Lyon under an academic merit scholarship. Amuse Bush Digrac Gelita Champagne Suvi Parlotage Parentier Aux Truffes Noir du Périgord. She hates G. Her voice was crisp, confident, with a French accent that would envious Parisians themselves. The words came in torrents, each syllable so carefully pronounced it showed not just knowledge of the language, but intimate acquaintance with French culinary ways. Victoria slowly palled as Jasmine went on, seeing that her strategy had catastrophically failed backfired. Margaret gazed open-mouthed, and other women in the group looked around uncomfortably. Edipur Terminer Lulio Grand Maria was with Dunla Vanilla de Madagascar. Jasmine concluded, handing the menu to Victoria with a calm smile. "I hope that was enlightening, ma'am." The silence was oppressive. Victoria stood rigid, holding the menu, mute for the first time that night. It was impossible to help but realize that this plain waitress had an education and sophistication level equal to anyone in that room. Robert stood up from the head table and made his way slowly over to the group. His eyes locked with Jasmine's for a second, and she noticed something there. Not pity, but respect, and something that looked very much like admiration. "Victoria," he murmured softly, his voice laced with a warning tone that she knew at once. "Maybe we should attend to the true purpose of tonight. Charity." Victoria quickly stepped back in control, having lost her grip on the situation. "Of course, dear," merely attempting to ensure everyone was aware of the correct procedures. Jasmine respectfully nodded and moved aside to resume working, but not before Margaret whispered nervously to Victoria. "Darling, maybe we made a mistake." Victoria caught Margaret's arm with more force than needed. "We didn't make a mistake," she hissed gently. "Amic tricks won't change who she actually is, and by the end of tonight I'll ensure that everyone here knows that all too well." What Victoria didn't realize was that Jasmine had devoted the past 4 years to methodically recording instances of racial discrimination within corporate settings for her MBA thesis. That she had discrete recorders, new civil rights legislation inside and out, and that each lethal word spoken that evening was being carefully transcribed. As Victoria plotted her next indignity, Jasmine strode across the room with the calm of one burdened by a secret too great to be told before the time was ripe. She had discovered early in life that real strength does not scream, it watches, records, and strikes at exactly the most crushing juncture. Robert went back to the main table, but he couldn't look away from the young woman he had just seen attacked by his own wife. There was something about that waitress that interested him profoundly. A dignity and intelligence that couldn't be hidden, no matter what uniform she was wearing. What none of them could have envisioned was that the humble worker Victoria was attempting to humiliate was weeks away from becoming the youngest senior analyst at one of the nation's top consulting firms, and that each act of bias that night was constructing a case that would turn humiliation into the catalyst for a justice that none of them would ever forget. Jasmine escaped to the hotel's beautiful bathroom and finally let her hands tremble, not of fear, but of a controlled adrenaline high she knew so well from her street fighting days in Chicago. She quietly pulled out a small digital recorder from her uniform pocket and tested the recording quality. Crystal clear 23 minutes of racial epithets, blatant discrimination, and deliberate humiliation, all carefully recorded. But that night had turned out to be a gold mine of academic research for her MBA thesis on racial microaggressions in elite corporate environments. But now, surveying her reflection in the gilded mirror, Jasmine realized this was much, much bigger than a simple university research project. "Jasmine," a soft voice knocked at the door. "Are you okay?" It was Robert Hartwell. Jasmine recognized at once the voice she had heard speaking to the organizers at the event. She thought about closing the door on him, but something in his truly worried tone drew her to open the door. Robert was alone in the hallway, his hands together before him in a pose that betrayed his tension. "I apologize for my wife's completely unacceptable conduct. There is no excuse for what I witnessed." Jasmine looked at him intently. 24 years of life had schooled her to be able to differentiate between condescending pity and true respect. In Robert's eyes, she saw something that she very seldom saw in white men of his standing: true shame and indignation aimed at his own kin. "Mr. Hartwell, I thank you for your concern, but you do not have to feel guilty about your wife's behavior." "Naturally I do," Robert said resolutely. 23 years of marriage have afforded me numerous chances to right this kind of behavior, and I have failed miserably. Jasmine, may I pose you an honest question? She nodded, intrigued. You're not exactly a waitress, are you? Jasmine broke into a smile for the first time that night. Why do you think that? Your French is superior to everybody else's in that room, including professors at great universities I know. Your demeanor, your enunciation, the manner in which you stand up to be counted when attacked. Robert hesitated. In addition, I can spot intelligence. I'm a Harvard MBA student, Jasmine conceded. I waitress to support my family and complete college. Robert shut his eyes, obviously grappling with the scope of what was happening. Harvard. My God, Jasmine. Victoria assaulted a Harvard student on the basis of sheer racial bias. Mr. Hartwell, this occurs far more frequently than you know. Your wife only gave voice to what is in the minds of many. That doesn't make it right, Robert said, his tone heavy with a feeling that shocked Jasmine. Indeed, it makes it worse. Might I inquire as to your field of study at Harvard? Analysis of systemic discrimination within corporate settings. I'm completing a thesis on prejudice and its impact on career opportunities among minorities. Robert was quiet for a good minute. Jasmine, can I put a proposal to you that may seem odd? 15 minutes later, they sat in a quiet corner of the hotel reception, out of view of the people attending the event. Robert had gotten them 2 coffees and talked in a low tone like he was conspiring. My business, Hartwell Development, has had some serious diversity problems. The board wants real, not cosmetic change, particularly in the aftermath of some recent events. Jasmine listened carefully, her academic antennae detecting every subtlety. I require someone with your knowledge to conduct a proper audit on our recruitment practices, promotions, and company culture. Someone who is familiar with both the theory and the practice of discrimination in the workplace. Mr. Hartwell, that's very kind, but it isn't kindness, Jasmine. It's necessity and self-interest. My firm requires genuine reform, and you obviously have the expertise and understanding to enact it. Robert pushed a card across the table. Outside consulting fee commensurate with industry standards for professionals of your standing. You would have full independence over means and findings. Jasmine accepted the card, the heaviness of the potential sinking in. Why are you doing this? Because I spent 23 years with a woman whose biases I quietly endured. Because I created a business that likely perpetuates the same systemic issues you research. And because, truthfully, after today, I need to take some action to make amends for the harm my family inflicts on the world. Victoria was in the lobby at that time seeking her husband. Seeing that he was conversing with Jasmine, her look immediately became a face of barely hidden anger. "Robert, dear," she said, approaching the table with a smile, which was as forced as her manner was unpleasant. "I was searching for you. What do you happen to be doing here with her? Victoria, I'm providing Jasmine with a position as a consultant with the firm." The ensuing silence was heavy with tension. Victoria glanced from her husband to Jasmine as if she had seen marital infidelity. "You're joking, aren't you?" Victoria laughed, and the high, nervous sound surprised her. "Robert, she's a waitress. She's an MBA student at Harvard in exactly the field where our firm is lacking expertise." Victoria paled visibly. "Harvard, yes, Victoria. The woman you had publicly embarrassed this evening is an extremely well-educated scholar who is doing a job here to support her family." Jasmine watched the interactions between the couple with an observer's detached eye of someone who analyzes social behavior. Victoria was obviously shocked, but rapidly calculating ways in which to minimize the damage to her own reputation. "Well, Robert, even if that were the case, it doesn't imply we act impulsively due to guilt feelings. It's not guilt, Victoria. It's admiration of competence and actual business necessity." Victoria spoke directly to Jasmine for the first time since the initial embarrassment. "Darling, I'm sure you realize that sometimes there are misunderstandings at social functions. Maybe we should all just put tonight's trivial disagreements behind us. Victoria's pathetic attempt to downplay her cruelty as a misunderstanding was so obvious that Jasmine nearly felt sorry for her. Nearly, Ms. Hartwell, there was no misunderstanding. You made it quite clear and direct. Victoria gritted another smile. Of course, dear, but savvy people like you must know that sometimes social context can be complex. As it happens, Jasmine answered quietly, individuals with my educational background are extremely specific concerning context and meaning, particularly when it is a matter of recorded racial discrimination. Recorded had caused Victoria to flinch slightly. Recorded. Robert observed his wife's face and realized right away. Victoria, were you taped? Jasmine neither admitted nor denied it, but her articulate silence was enough. Victoria realized that this night had turned far more than a mere embarrassment of an employee. Jasmine Roberts spoke standing up from the table. I look forward to your response to the consulting bid. My assistant will call tomorrow with the details of the contract. As the pair left, Jasmine could hear the start of a heated argument. Victoria had come to understand too late that she had attacked the wrong individual at the wrong moment in the wrong manner. In the bathroom again, Jasmine reviewed a recorder once more and grinned. 23 minutes of blatant racial discrimination, and then 15 minutes of a frantic attempt at damage limitation. For her thesis, this was gold. It was an opportunity to make real changes at a very important company for her career. But as she prepared to return to the dining room and finish her night's work, Jasmine felt that something much bigger was taking shape. The humiliation Victoria had tried to impose became the foundation of something that would change not only her own life, but perhaps the culture of an entire company. What Victoria didn't realize yet was that she had assaulted not only a waitress, but also an upcoming corporate discrimination expert who would now gain immediate access to her own husband's company's internal system. The irony was mouthwatering, but Jasmine knew that real justice would be served through diligent work, systemic reform, and quantifiable effects. As she looked in on herself for the last time, Jasmine understood that tonight had completed one chapter of her existence and opened another that was entirely different. Victoria had attempted to put her in her place and didn't know that she was sending her into a position of influence that she would exercise to make sure other people would never have to go through the same shame. The waitress was going to be the consultant. And when it did happen, it would be Victoria who was going to learn where she truly belonged in a world where character and ability were more valued than birthright privilege. 3 weeks went by, and Victoria Hartwell woke up with an unusual twinge in her gut. Her phone had 47 missed calls and unread messages numbering in the hundreds. As she opened the first link Margaret had sent at 6:00 a.m., she felt like the ground had swallowed her up. Business executive accused of racial discrimination. Viral audio reveals Boston elite, screamed the Boston Herald headline. Below it was a picture of her at the gala event, her look of contempt frozen for all eternity. The 23-minute recording was on every city's top radio station. All the venomous things she had said against Jasmine rang crystal clear on the airwaves, along with outraged words from hosts and heart-wrenching testimony from individuals who were in attendance. That day, Victoria ran downstairs, where Robert was in the kitchen with a cup of coffee and a look she had never seen before. Cold, cold, definitive. Robert, you must do something, she sobbed, gesturing with her cell phone. This is an organized attack. That waitress is intent on destroying us. Victoria, Robert responded in a controlled voice without lifting his eyes from his newspaper. That waitress is our new corporate diversity counselor. And after hearing this tape, I fully realize why our company is so in need of her expertise. Victoria went into shock. What did you say? Jasmine began yesterday. Her first task will be a full audit of our corporate culture and analysis of all staff in leadership roles. Robert finally glanced at her. I'm sure you can see the implication. At that moment, Victoria's phone did ring. It was Patricia Whitmore, chair of the board of the tennis club, at which Victoria had been a member for 15 years. Victoria, the board held an emergency session this morning, Patricia announced without hesitation. Your membership has been withdrawn effective at once. The conduct in the audio clip is not compatible with our culture. Victoria hadn't even had a chance to reply when the call was ended. Then her phone blew up with messages. The WhatsApp group Ladies Who Lunch, her social circle, was abuzz with messages all about her. I can't believe I've had around a person like that for years. My daughter attends Harvard. I wonder how many Jasmines she humiliated without us finding out. James told him he doesn't want to do business with Hartwell Development any longer. Victoria opened up her Instagram account and found that she had lost 3,000 followers overnight. The comments on her recent pictures were heartbreaking. What a disgusting individual. Rich racist exposed. I hope she learned something from this, Margaret phoned in tears. Victoria Charles canceled the contract for the office we were remodeling. He claimed he doesn't wish to be surrounded by toxic components. I'm socially destroyed. By this time, Victoria was hyperventilating. Robert, you need to make that audio disappear. Sue the woman, do something. Robert slowly got up. Victoria, you recorded this? Every word left your mouth. There is nothing to sue but your own cruelty. The telephone rang again. It was Dr. Harrison, the director of the charitable organization where Victoria had volunteered as volunteer vice president for 8 years. Victoria, the board has voted unanimously to strip you of all titles. As of today, his tone was cold. Honestly, finding out that one of our leaders has stated such discrimination was a shock to every one of us. Victoria collapsed into a chair. In less than 24 hours, she had lost her social standing, her friendships, her charity commitments, and the trust of her own community. You know what the most ironic part is, Robert said, folding the newspaper. Jasmine didn't even have to do anything. She just documented your true nature and let your own words speak for themselves. At that very moment, Jasmine was at the Hartwell Development office, being introduced to the Human Resources team, dressed in an elegant suit and carrying a briefcase full of proposals for structural changes. She had gone from humiliated waitress to respected consultant in less than a month. As of today, Robert revealed at the department meeting, Jasmine Washington is to head our diversity and inclusion program. She has the complete power to bring about changes required in our corporate environment. The staff welcomed her with courtesy interest. Most had listened to the audio that went viral and comprehended the importance of hiring her. Jasmine spoke to the staff the same way she had spoken at the time of humiliation. My intent is not to punish anyone, but to make everyone feel respected and valued, no matter their appearance or background. Victoria was still confined at home, seeing her social life disintegrate on social media. With every notification came a new embarrassment, canceled plans, lost friends, doors shutting. Margaret ceased taking her calls. Patricia Whitmore shared a picture from a tennis club with a post praising our genuine values of respect and inclusion. Her hairdresser even canceled her appointments, saying that she was booked solid. Robert climbed the stairs to the bedroom that evening and discovered Victoria sobbing over the mirror. 23 years, he replied flatly. 23 years I lived with this individual and pretended not to notice. Robert, can we please discuss this? It was a horrible misunderstanding. Victoria, it was not a misunderstanding. It was you being the person that you have always been. But now someone caught it on tape. He went over to the closet and started taking off his clothes. My lawyers will bring over the divorce papers tomorrow. The house belongs to you, but our joint assets are going to be split based on what the court says. Victoria stood up desperately. You can't be serious because of a waitress. Because of a Harvard student you attacked out of pure racial prejudice, Robert corrected. Because of 23 years of tolerating your cruelty. Because of discovering that my wife is exactly the kind of person I've always despised. As Robert packed his bags, Victoria finally understood the magnitude of what she had lost. Not only a union, but the whole social identity constructed on bases of privilege, which now turned out to be as brittle as glass. Following morning, Jasmine awoke in her apartment close to Harvard. getting ready for another day of labor that would change not only her own life, but maybe the culture of a whole company. Her phone lit up with messages of encouragement from colleagues, professors, and even strangers who had read her story. What began as an evening of overtime to collect a paycheck had become a chance to make real, quantifiable, and lasting change. And all because a privileged woman had utterly misjudged who she was attacking. While Victoria faced the collapse of her old life, Jasmine walked confidently toward a future she would build with competence, dignity, and the strength that comes from turning humiliation into purpose. The waitress Victoria had tried to put in her place was about to redefine what it really meant to occupy a position of power and use it for good. 6 months after, Jasmine was promoted to Director of Diversity at Hartwell Development, enacting policies that served as a national model. Her private consulting business exploded, catering to large corporations wanting actual change. Victoria lived reclusive in her vacant mansion. Divorced, friendless, ostracized from the social scene she once ruled. Her appeals for forgiveness on social media only earned her more criticism. Desperate efforts to restore her image failed systematically. Robert wed a civil rights attorney and gave half of his wealth to college scholarships for students such as Jasmine. At the graduation ceremony at Harvard, Jasmine spoke to hundreds of students. Never allow anyone to dictate your value based on bias. The ultimate revenge is success they did not conceive of. Victoria's tape still circulated as an example in racial discrimination classes. Her cruelty was a case study on the cost of prejudice. Jasmine made humiliation into purpose and created a legacy that would influence lives for generations. If you think that nobody deserves to be judged by the color of their skin or by their origins, subscribe to the channel for more stories that show you that judging people might cost you more than any fortune.